And now we're live. Welcome back to the PagerDuty live stream. I'm Mandy Walls, DevOps Advocate here at PagerDuty. I've been away most of March, so it's nice to be back with you. And back with me today is Frank, and we're going to dig into some really awesome stuff today. We're going to talk about variables for event orchestration. So, Frank, welcome back, man. I know
Thank you for having me.
there's a lot of awesome stuff here, so we can just get
There is.
rolling.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this. This is a feature that's been kind of close to my heart for a while. Like basically, since I joined PagerDuty, I've been waiting to build out this feature. So I'm really excited it got released this week and to kind of walk people through it and some of the craziness that it can do. So,
Sweet. Yeah. So, folks have questions, you can add them in the chat on Twitch and on LinkedIn. We'll be able to see them there. If not, if you have questions later, you can send them to my team, community-team, pagerduty.com, and we'll get them forwarded. Our community is going through some transition. So, normally I tell you to post them there, but that may or may not work in the next couple of weeks. So, we'll see. But in the meantime, you can always email us. So, all right, Frank, let's get
take
it
it
going.
away.
Take it away.
Cool. Yeah, so the feature I want to talk about today is called variables, event orchestration variables. And I'm going to kind of start by giving some background around like why we built variables, what it is, how it works. But I mostly want to spend a lot of this session kind of going through a demo. But we're going to set things up first to kind of give folks an idea of why we built this. And so for those of you who've heard me talk before or read anything I've written, I talk a lot about event-driven automation. I'm a big fan of event-driven automation. But there's always kind of been two automation problems that have been really difficult to solve historically. And I'll say when we were building out variables, I did a bunch of research. I talked to hundreds of customers, and everyone said they were having the same kinds of problems. And what those problems were is when folks were trying to do event-driven automation, they really struggled with addressing anything that had to do with state or prediction. And I'll kind of explain those a bit more. And so when I say state or state problems, the idea here is if you're doing event-driven automation, you want an event or a signal to come in and you want to automate something based off of it. But if you don't know the state of your systems, your services, your infrastructure, you can only make so good a decision. So a great example of this is like, you can either always pack an umbrella for the day or never pack an umbrella for the day. If it was raining or the state of the weather, you'd probably do something a lot more precise. And with event-driven automation solutions in the market right now, it's just really hard to do that. It's actually, I didn't talk to anyone who's able to solve this problem in that space. And so a really common example of this for folks who use PagerDuty is around the concept of major incidents. And so people will build out event-driven automation, and then a major incident will come along, and suddenly all that work you put into building out this automation like goes out the window because state's changed. You know, the world's in a different state than it used to be, and you need to do things differently. And it's just really hard to solve that problem in general, like in software with event-driven automation today. And the other issue that comes up is on prediction. So if you think about how you're deploying automation, if you could tell the future, you would probably automate things a little bit differently. If you could say, look at event patterns or past failures across time, you could leverage that information to proactively address incidents or select a better automation to run or a better diagnostic to use or a better remediation to deploy. And again, that's really hard to do right now. Basically, the way that a lot of event-driven automation platforms work today is an event comes in and you have to react to that event as quickly as possible. And so there's not a whole lot of time to actually look at patterns and make decisions and then use that data to predict things. And so, you know, if you're lucky, best case scenario, you might only have, say, a window of 5 minutes worth of data, maybe 6 minutes worth of data to look across to sort of make an assessment and make a prediction off of. And that's not enough time at all to make these kinds of predictions. And so when we looked at building out variables, we started by saying, okay, how can we improve PagerDuty's event-driven automation through AI ops in such a way that we can start addressing these problems for our customers so they can start automating a lot more stuff. And so that's kind of where we started the investigation and we started the story. And what we did was we built variables. And when we started building it, we kind of asked ourselves, great, we want to solve that state problem. We want to solve that prediction problem. Why isn't anyone solving it today in the market? Why isn't anyone sort of selling a solution that can do all that fun stuff. And what it boiled down to is sort of what an incident looks like. And so this is one of the graphs that I always like talk about when I talk about variables. And really what it's showing is what an incident practically looks like. So if you see that like big red exclamation mark, that's like when your incident's triggered. Everyone is very aware of when an incident's triggered because their phone goes off and everyone runs to the computer and a Slack channel gets opened up. But realistically, when that incident is triggered, there's probably, dozens or hundreds of events that occurred before that incident was triggered that just didn't meet the criteria for triggering an incident yet. But they all had really important data to it. And the way to think about it is, if you had like infinite knowledge, if you were, if you knew everything in the universe, you'd probably have started an incident way earlier in time. But it just took a while for you to get the kind of information needed in order to trigger an incident. And the way everything works today is that information necessary to trigger an incident is usually represented by a P1 coming in or a customer complaining, or you go to your website and it gives you a 404. And as soon as you're notified, you kind of have access to that event that triggered the incident, but everything that came before it, you lose access to. And so, an incident's triggered and you could be missing out on minutes or hours worth of information that could help you resolve the incident faster. Or an incident or an event that occurred 30 minutes ago or 40 minutes ago might have actually been a better time to create an incident. You just couldn't see a pattern yet. You couldn't predict what was happening. And so we figured this is probably what's causing an issue around not being able to do event-driven automation off of state or for prediction-based problems. And so then what we did was we built variables to kind of specifically target this issue of how do you get access to all of that event data that exists before an incident is created in order to define state, in order to identify patterns, to do prediction, in order to make better automation decisions. And the way that we decide to do that with variables is we allowed ingested event data that comes into PagerDuty to hang around for a little while. So the way it works today with basically every event-driven automation solution in the market is an event will come in, you'll use its data, you'll react to it, the event will leave. With variables now, an event will come in, and the first thing we do is we enrich that event with all of the historical data that has occurred in the past within this ingestion key within PagerDuty. So we add all of that to the event that's come in. Then we figure out exactly what automation to run, how to run it, what we should be doing. And then we get that event to drop all of its information off again on the way out. And so what this allows us to do is effectively cache data over time. So with each event that comes in, we enrich this repository of past event information. So the next event that comes in has access to it to make more informed decisions. And so by doing that, if I go back a slide, effectively what we're doing is, even though the incident is triggered here, we're actually capturing all of this data that occurred beforehand. And we're actually giving users the ability to start triggering their incidents sooner, or when their incidents are triggered, accessing this historical data to make higher quality decisions. And so that's kind of variables. That's what we're trying to solve, and that's how we're solving it. And what I want to do now is kind of walk people through a couple of really practical examples of how you would use this.
Yeah, awesome. So, this is the part I want to see is how we get through all this.
Yeah, and so what I've done is I've come up with 4 really common sort of use cases for variables that should resonate with people, and I'll walk through all of them. Basically, as we set them up, these fellows will ungray as we go down.
Can we make them a little bigger? Does that work on the UI there?
You can zoom in like that, and I can even make that might actually be better.
There we go. Now they're readable. That's great.
Let me do this. Recenter. Haha.
Yeah,
right.
Perfect.
So the first issue that I want to use variables to solve is around major incident management. So right now, this rule is empty. I haven't filled anything in yet. And so we're going to start from scratch. But for anyone who's familiar with major incident management, usually you deal with events and incidents very differently than your typical process. If, say, your usual incident comes in, it gets triaged, it goes to a development team, hopefully you fix it really quickly, hopefully there's minimal customer impact. Major incidents are usually triggered by escalation. They usually involve different workflows, different processes. There's usually a lot of phone calls happening. And so they typically want to follow a different form of automation that's more bespoke, that's more efficient at escalating things and mobilizing people. And today, you can't really, with any event-driven automation solutions in the market, proactively detect major incidents, and certainly not modulate what automation you apply based on the presence of a major incident. And so what I want to do is I want to make it so that I catch major incidents early, and that when I do catch that major incident, I start using different automation for PagerDuty. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little button down here, hiding in the left-hand corner, called View Cache Variables. When I click that, it's going to open up our new variables drawer where I can start to create this stuff. And so I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to call it Major Incident Detected. And so what this will do is, once I finish filling this out, is it's going to create a new variable that I can access in any event orchestration rule that I create for this event orchestration. And so you can use it in conditions, you can use it in actions, you can use it as a value in conditions, which is kind of fun. I'll show you how that works. And each of these variables is based off of event data. So I don't have any events in my instance right now, but you would see your event picker over here. And there's
how much history does that give you on the event picker?
It works the exact same as a normal event orchestration rule.
Okay.
So it'll give you the same history as a normal rule, and it's actually all the same UI too. So when we were building this out, we wanted it to look and feel like everything else in event orchestration.
Awesome.
And there's 3 types of variables that you can create. So there's a Ceph variable, which is basically a variable based off of the transforms event data in PagerDuty. There's a raw data variable, which is a variable that is populated with the raw event payload that comes into your events. So PagerDuty hasn't transformed it yet. We're just taking what came directly out of your monitoring tool. There's an event count variable. And this allows you to basically track how many times a specific kind of event has occurred across every single rule in this event orchestration for use in every single rule across this event orchestration. And the event count is actually my favorite. It allows you to do the coolest use cases, in my opinion. But what I want to do, because I'm tracking major incidents, is I actually want to say, in the last, let's call it 3,600 seconds, I'm going to define a condition, and I'm going to say count. So add to this variable an event count, a count of how many events have come in, if they match the criteria that I'm going to define here. And I'm going to say if the event component matches, let's say, I don't know, front-end load balancer for fun. So my front-end load balancer is down. What this is going to say is anytime an event comes in and it's associated with our front-end load balancer, I want to count how many times that happens. I'm going to hit save. It's a pretty basic variable. What it's doing is something really important. What it's doing is it's going to start tracking every time events that I consider to be major incident triggering come in, so that now I actually know the state of my system. I will know if there's a major incident ongoing or not. And so for this major incident rule up here, I can go in and I can say, if actually I'm going to use this. We have a new dropdown. Aha. So if my major incident detected variable, paste, is greater than 1, I know that a major incident has occurred. So I know in my system, whenever a front-end load balancer issue comes in, it means there is a major incident. This variable will be populated, and then I can plug it into a rule. And then once I do that, I know there's a major incident occurring. I've established state within my event orchestration, and I can start building automation off of that state. And what's really important to notice here is typically with event orchestration, your rules are based off of event data. It's like an event will come in, you write a rule based off of that event, and then the rule does something. So like you make a rule that says if the event.summary matches production is down, tell someone about it. But in this case, actually, this rule is not based on event data. So an event comes in, and when it evaluates against this rule, we're actually not looking at the data in that event. Instead, we're looking at the state of our system. And so that means every single event that comes in, as soon as this variable is populated, we're going to start treating it differently. And that's really important because during a major incident, you really want to start funneling all of your event and incident traffic towards your major incident team so they can see what's going on. Is the problem getting better or worse? And are we dealing with it effectively? And so if I hit next, I can say, there's P1, major incidents detected, all incidents going to the team. I can say, make it critical. I can even say always trigger, right? So with these rules, I'm saying every single event that comes in when a major incident's ongoing, make sure it's critical, make sure that there's no auto resolution happening, leave a note, increase the priority. I can hit save. And then what I've done with this rule now is I've made it so that this event orchestration, whenever it detects that a major incident is ongoing, it's just going to start treating all of your events and incidents differently. It's going to start sending everything to your major incident team, and it's going to start making sure that people have the context they need to start addressing the issue faster. And the best part is, once the major incident's over, this variable will depopulate, this rule will shut down, and your systems will automatically go back to using their normal automation flow.
Now, is that for every incident on your account, or is that every incident coming into this particular endpoint for this workflow?
Every incident coming into this endpoint.
Okay.
These variables are scoped to the orchestrations that they're created for.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so I could have this variable at a global level, and then I could actually have a variable with the same name at the service level, but it would work completely differently. So you're not sort of constrained by names. So if multiple teams are using variables, as long as they're using different orchestrations, they can use different names, different population patterns, and they can employ them differently.
There's definitely cases where I would want multiple things to come in and do this. Like you use load balancers. Another case would be like, oh, the database is down. That's also probably going to trigger and come in the same way as well, right?
Yeah, and you can capture them all. So the condition language for our variables is the same as event orchestration. So you can have, as many of these as you want. You can be as complex as you want in defining what a major incident is for your instance. Customize it to your heart's content. And there's probably going to be more than just a load balancer, but we give you the options to sort of do all of that and capture it. And that's just one of the 4 use cases. That's the most commonly appreciated use case.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could definitely see folks getting a lot out of this one.
Yeah. The other one, we're going to get a little more complicated. The other one I want to walk through is what I would call reactive automation. And so the idea with this is, say you are deploying event-driven diagnostics and remediation. So an event will come in and you automatically remediate or run diagnostics for it. What we get asked a lot is, hey, I don't want to run the same remediation twice, or I don't want to run a restart script if diagnostics are running, things like that. And so with variables now, we can actually track what automations have been run in the past, and we can use that information to change what automations are run next. So I will start by clicking this View Cache Variables button again. I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to say, let's call it diagnostics run. So I'm going to do event count again. So what this variable is going to do is it's going to track whether or not diagnostics have been run. And I'm going to set this to a little bit less. I'm going to say 300 seconds. So let me know if in the very recent past a diagnostic has been run for this event orchestration. Track that information so that I can use it. And the condition I'm going to supply here is I'm going to say event dot custom details dot automation executed matches diagnostics. So I'm basically saying if an event comes in and it has a custom detail that says automation executed and it is populated with the word diagnostics, count that event. And what's really important here is we're looking at the Ceph data. This can be useful in a second. So I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to start creating some rules. So I'm not going to define any conditions for this first level of the rule. The only thing I want to do is I want to add a custom detail called automation executed. Do you remember I just added to that variable? And I'm going to put the word diagnostics here. Just going to fill that word in. And then I'm going to trigger a webhook to automatically trigger on creation, I'm going to say run diagnostics, and I'm going to just say example.com and not fill in the rest of this, and hit save. And so what's really important with this rule is an event will come in, it will run this automated diagnostic that we're triggering, and it will customize a field indicating that it has run a diagnostic. And what's really important about that is as soon as it's done that, it will start populating that variable we made with the fact that we have already triggered a diagnostic for this orchestration. So that what we can do next is we can create a nested rule that, again, grab this person, we put it in there. I'm going to do the same as greater than 1. This means that I can now come in here and I can actually trigger a different automation afterwards. So I know my diagnostics have been run already. So then I can programmatically come in here and say, run a different automation, whatever you want, whatever is useful for you, probably a remediation afterwards. But with this, you're actually able to change which automations you're triggering based on how recently the last automation you've run is. So it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of how you're automating, how you're putting pressure on your automation systems, and how you're controlling that automated remediation and diagnostics process. So another really super interesting use case, we have a lot of customers who ask us about this stuff, if they're building out automated remediation and diagnostics. And this is what you can do now.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Because if you're running in something like Kubernetes or whatever, your first diagnostic is looking at a health check or something like that, and then deciding that, we're going to add more instances to this pod or scale it up or move the workload somewhere else. Or there's a lot of sophisticated stuff you could do behind that you're going to do a check first, but if you've already checked it, move on.
Don't do it again.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to check it over and over again. It's bad.
Yeah.
Move on.
It's not getting better.
Yeah. Awesome.
And it's actually, this is a good segue into the next one, which I will call dynamic automation. I'm just going to change this a little bit so that my screen looks prettier. That looks prettier. And so one of the other questions we often get is folks who want to run automation, they usually want to be able to run automation in an informed fashion. So say you're triggering a rundeck job or you're triggering a webhook. Ideally, you would want to do that to target the specific host that went down. So you're using Kubernetes, you want to target the node that failed. In today's world, you sort of have a bunch of different rules that would execute based on whatever event data is coming in, and hopefully that event data contains node information. With variables now, you can be a little more clever. And so I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call this one last failed node. And for this one, I'm going to use the event Ceph data. So I'm going to use a different kind of variable now. And for anyone who's used event orchestration before, this should look really similar to our screens within an event orchestration rule where you're defining event field extraction information. And so what I can do here is I can say, go into my event and take a look at the, let's say, node. And I'm going to say .star. And what this is going to do is this is going to extract all the information from the event payload's node field into this variable. So the event comes in, it matches the conditions I define, and it will drop off its node information for use in future events. I'm going to say if the event dot, let's say component matches Kubernetes, save. And so what this variable is going to do now is if a Kubernetes event comes in, I will suck out the node associated with it for use in a moment. And then I'll come over here to my rule and I'm going to say again, if, or let's say if, summary, slow response time. So I'm getting a slow response time event coming in. So it's indicating that services are degrading. I want to go and restart a potentially impacted node to get things back on track. in today's world, you wouldn't necessarily know what to restart, but because we created a variable that's tracking the last Kubernetes node that failed, we can actually come in here into our webhooks. And when we're triggering, we can actually say impacted node, and we can target, is it last failed node, the specific node that failed. So if I want to say restart Kubernetes, is that again? What I'm doing now is instead of just hoping that I'm restarting the right server or the right impacted part of my infrastructure, I can actually track the last part of my infrastructure that failed, store that in a node, in a variable, and then load that variable up into my automation. So when I trigger my automation, I'm extremely precise and know exactly what failed. I know exactly how to restart it. I can restart the exact specific thing every time. So this is a version of what I would call a self-configuring rule. But in this case, basically this rule's automated diagnostic will self-configure to whatever the last failed node or component is in your system.
Yeah, that's super awesome.
It's a time saver.
Yeah.
It makes things a lot more accurate.
Absolutely.
And then the last one is, I'm going to say it's a different kind of self-configuring rule. I've just called this triage support, but this is going to be a rule that automatically helps teams with root cause analysis. So one of the questions we get a lot is people will say, I want to make an event orchestration where the rule will let a team know what's failed recently, like as precise as possible in a note, so that when the instance is created, they're not sort of searching around to figure out what's happened. They can just sort of solve things right away. And so then for this rule, I'm actually going to use the same variable I already made. And I'm going to do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say if event dot custom details dot impacted node matches my last failed node. So what I've done here is this is now a self-configuring condition. So in event orchestration before variables, basically the way your condition would work is you'd always have a target. So in this case, the target is the value you're looking at, or the field you're looking at. You have a value. And your target would always be sort of dynamic, and that it's referencing a field. And your value would always be a string or some fixed value.
Right.
Like, node 2 or whatever. Now your value is actually a dynamic value. So what's going to happen is when events come in, this rule will automatically self-configure based on the last thing that populated this node. And so in this case, if an event comes in and it's associated with the same impacted node as the failure we're already tracking, this rule will automatically configure that. So the event comes in, it says node 2 is down. This rule will automatically say, if node 2 is the thing that's already down, match. So you're saving potentially hundreds of rules now. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to say, hey, there's already an active incident looking into failure that's already going on. And so what I'm doing here is, in addition to having the rule be self-configuring, I actually have a note that is also self-configuring based on this past data. So I can hit save, and assuming my syntax is right, now what I have is a rule that basically handles every single permutation for my setup. So every single permutation of failures that can occur within my Kubernetes setup, this rule will automatically configure to, so that when an incident is created based on those nodes failing, you don't have to make new rules. You don't have to do anything differently. Everything is just automatically done for you. And your responders automatically get access to all the information they need to get resolution in place as fast as possible. So those are just like 4 examples of what variables can do. Obviously, you can do substantially more than this as well, but it kind of gives you an idea of like the new kinds of use cases we're able to open up with this feature. There's like a lot. So in research with customers, we would show people this feature, and then they'd be like, oh, wow, Bill's had a problem. He's 3 years he's been complaining about it. We can solve it now. Let me go talk to Bill. the number of things that people are now able to automate and address with event-driven automation because of
Yeah.
variables it's crazy hearing some of those stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot of power here for folks
Yes.
who've been, you know, digging around in these and are ready to go to the next level. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that's interesting for people. Are there any questions that have come through?
There's no questions through yet. We still have a whole bunch of people watching. So if you're out there, especially on the it looks like LinkedIn, you can add a comment in the comments field there, and we will see it if you have a question or anything for Frank there. So in the meantime, then just the basics that this is available now for everybody. We've gone is this GA now for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is now generally available for anyone who is using PagerDuty AI Ops. It works for both global orchestrations and service orchestrations. I always do my work out of global because it's just easier and faster, but it's available for both of those.
Yeah, yeah, and we see. I think when folks ask questions and stuff, we see a mix of people using maybe more weighted towards the globals, but still some folks out there making use of service orchestrations too. So
Yeah, definitely.
cool. We had one other question in the forums earlier this week. Like, is there a limit to how many global orchestrations an account can have?
Uh, Not really. So, like, if I go over here, you can see this is my
Yeah, you've
instance.
got a lot.
Yeah, and that's actually I've seen people with more. So you can kind of create as many event orchestrations as you want. Where limits start to come in is for your integration keys, you can have up to 10 of those.
Okay.
And then for your global orchestration rules, I think the rule is you can have 25 sets with 25 rules each. And so a
Okay.
set is basically, um, if you look at this and you sort of look vertically, each vertical grouping of rules is considered a set. So in this
Okay.
event orchestration right now, I have two sets. So this is a set here, and then this is a set. So I can have 25 of those, and then with each of them, I can add 25 rules. So you end up getting quite a bit of possible use cases that you're covering.
Yeah, that's a lot. So
And then for variables, you can have up to 100 of these so far.
okay.
So we haven't had anyone who's gotten up to 100. If you think you need more than 100 variables, please let me know. I'd love to understand
The
more.
race is on. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we found that tends to be more than enough for most people. But again, if you want more than that, just let me know, and I'd love to talk to you.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Sweet.
Cool.
Now, is there anything else coming up for event orchestrations that folks should be on the lookout for?
We do have some new stuff coming. I will say there's going to be some announcements in I'm gonna say like the June and July timeline
Awesome.
of some new features coming out. I guess to tease it a little bit, we get a lot of questions on event orchestration now of scale. So basically, the customers that we have coming and talking to us now are using event orchestration to power tens of thousands of services,
Yeah.
like just incredible scale and volume. And so there's two features we have coming out in the next couple of months that are specifically designed to help people manage that scale and volume.
Okay.
One of them is going to let you basically manage a near infinite number of service routes. So that feature is called dynamic routing. And it's going to give you an option when you're building out service routes to really scale that out. So I think one customer has 3,000 service routes.
Oh my goodness.
Well, dynamic routes, you could have 30,000, 60,000, 100,000, won't matter to me. So it'll really allow you to expand the number of services that you can manage through service routes. And that's got a lot of people really excited. Like I said, we're talking to a lot of really big customers now that have big scale problems.
Yeah.
So it'll help them out. And then another feature that's coming in the very near future is going to help customers more dynamically manage how escalation policies get triggered. So, say you have two people working or two teams working out of one service, and you want to use event orchestration to control which of those two teams gets notified during an incident. In the next couple of months, we're going to have some great news for you. So when that comes out, definitely keep an eye out for some of the marketing coming out around that. But we have a solution coming out soon to help fix that problem as well.
We get a lot of those questions, so you will definitely be back here on the stream to show that one off for everybody who wants more flexibility there. Absolutely.
I will have a lot of answers in the next couple of months to those questions.
That'll be awesome. That will be absolutely fantastic. So
cool.
All right. Well, this has been great. For folks out there, watching it on YouTube, if you missed at the beginning, you can always submit questions to us. You can submit it to my team, community-team@pagerduty.com. Depending on when you're watching this, you can also come to our forums at community.pagerduty.com. They may look different sometime in the near future. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, Frank, thanks for showing all this off. I'm super excited. If anybody's out there and has a orchestration set that they'd like to share with us and like show off what they're doing, or even come on the stream and kind of go through how they're using these solutions to better orchestrate with their teams, we would love to show these off, and maybe we'll collect up some like cookbooks or recipes of rules that folks might find interesting. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love that. And yeah, so this has been great, Frank. Thanks so much for showing all this off.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add really quick too is if people do have questions, there is a K-base up for this specifically. So you can go to the variables knowledge base. It's like a dedicated document.
Oh, excellent.
And you can, everything that I said really quickly here, you could read at a slower pace that's easier to digest. And that document will have a lot more information on, limitations, applications, all the specifics of variables that people might be curious in. That's live now too, if people want to go there and take a look at that.
Awesome. I've just added that to the comments here, and we'll make sure that gets added for folks there as well. So it's on the support page, event orchestration variables, so you can find that.
Cool.
Awesome. Frank, thanks so much, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. For everybody else out there, we'll see you next week. We'll wish you an uneventful weekend. Take care.